Hello and welcome back to the Joyful Soul Creates. Charlotte here, and today I'm sharing a video using glitter embossing paste for the background, and I'm going to be using the Leafy texture stencil from the Crafters Workshop for this. And I just flipped my panel over once I had it in position and adhered it with some post-it tape on the back so that the stencil would stay where I wanted it. For my glitter paste, I'm actually making my own using some modelling paste as the base. This is DecoArt Media modelling paste, which dries clear. So I'm just scooping some of that out with my palette knife, and then I'm going to add lots and lots and lots of glitter into the paste to make my own glitter paste. So I'm using a spatula to mix the paste and the glitter together, and just adding a bit of glitter at a time and mixing and just keeping going until I'm happy with the amount of glitter in the paste. It actually took me quite a while to be happy with how much glitter there was, and I kept adding more and more and more. This is a great way to use your glitter if you're concerned about the environmental effects of the microplastics from glitter, for example, or if you just don't like glitter getting everywhere when you use it. Mixing it into your paste will keep it contained once the paste has dried, so it's not going to shed everywhere and will make less mess and less impact on the environment. You can use whatever embossing paste or texture paste you have for this, and whatever glitter you have as well. And if you're concerned about your texture paste drying out, which I have been, prior to getting this one, I'd only had a little pot that I got in a kit, and it dried out pretty much after the first time I used it, despite being tightly capped. So if that's something of concern to you, I have actually, at the same time as this video, I have another video going live which has some tips I got from Stamp Junkie's Facebook page about best practices for storing embossing paste to stop them drying out. So I thought I would make a little video and share those with you. So if you'd like to see that video, I'll have it linked in the top right corner. I only opened this paste for making this video, so I cannot yet confirm that those tips definitely work, but they are there if you would like to see them anyway. So once I'd made my paste, I just scraped it over my stencil, spreading it like icing a cake or spreading butter. And then I decided to keep the excess paste I had. I wrapped it in some cling film and put it in a pot to seal it up and see if that will store well, rather than just wasting it. If it doesn't dry out, then I can use it again on a project in future. Having completed the background, I cleaned up the stencil, palette knife and my craft mat before anything could dry on that, and set the panel aside to dry. And then I'm going to start colouring my image. This image is from Sparkle and Sprinkle. It's a Digi stamp, and it's from the Baby Oh Baby stamp set. And I'm going to be colouring it in with my Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers, and you can see all the colours I am using. The caps are on screen. And if you would like to skip the colouring, I have a number on screen and also in the description box below, where you can skip to see the finished card after I finish the colouring if you don't want to watch it. Whilst I am colouring, I'll quickly tell you about the Cupcake Inspiration Challenge, because this is my card for the first Cupcake Inspiration Challenge of the year. The theme for the challenge is something new, and I'm approaching that in a few different ways. The stencil I used is new to me. The embossing paste or modelling paste is new to me. Mixing glitter paste is a new technique to me, and also being a new baby card, that's another way of interpreting the new theme. The sponsor for the challenge is Sparkle and Sprinkle, which is partly why I'm using one of their images on my card. And if you come and play along with our challenge and make a project relating to the theme of something new, then you have a chance to win a prize from Sparkle and Sprinkle, and I will leave a link in the description box below to the challenge so that you can get all the details and link up to join in with us if you would like to do so. So whilst I've been talking about that, I have been colouring the skin on the image. When I colour skin, I generally put down the lightest colour first and then start working from darkest to lightest. Most of my colouring, other than skin, I just go darkest to lightest, but with a skin colour I prefer to put my lightest colour in first as a base and then go from darkest to lightest after that. I'm not an expert colorist. Most of my technique I have picked up from watching YouTube videos or also from a couple of classes at Kit and Clouder. They are very good colouring classes if you're looking for classes, and Elise is lovely and very helpful, and also the Facebook group is very useful if you are interested in something like that. So once I've laid in all my shadow areas, I will then just finish blending out with my lightest colour, and then I'm going to move on to colouring the hair. I struggle with hair a bit. It's not something I find very easy to colour, but I try my best. So generally I will start with my darkest colour, as I usually do with any colouring, but rather than putting flat colour down, I'm going to flick in, and this is one of the times that I will use the brush tip on my Illustrator markers. Generally I colour with the bullet tip, I just find it easier, but the brush tip is preferable for the flicking technique that I use for colouring hair. One issue I have found with my Illustrator markers is that sometimes the brush tips seem to end up a bit frayed. I'm not sure if I'm just being too heavy-handed with them and pressing too hard and that's causing them to fray, or if it's just what happens with them over time, but it could well just be user error. And in that case, if the tips are too frayed to do the flicking with, then I just swap to the billet tips anyway, because it's easier than trying to fight with the frayed tip. So I went for kind of goldeny, yellowy, blonde colours for the hair, like a deep blonde, and I'm just flicking the colours in and building it up with the darker colours to the tips and the roots, and then lighter towards the middle. And as I said, I go from darkest colour to lightest colour, although I did here go back in with a medium tone just because I wasn't entirely happy with the blend between the dark and light, and I thought I needed to add another medium tone in. Hair again is something that I do a bit differently because I use more colours in hair than I would generally use for my colouring. For hair I can sometimes use 5 or 6 different colours, whereas for most of my colouring I will use 3 shades. Having finished the hair, I decided I would colour the flower next because I hadn't decided what colour I wanted to do the dress. So I just am doing some very simple colouring. I only used 1 shade for the green on the flower because it's so small, and then I used 2 shades for the petals. I used a pink and then red for the shadows. After some contemplation, I decided I would use yellows to colour the dress, but I wanted a kind of soft yellow, not a bright yellow. So I had to have a look at my colour chart and try and work out what colour combination I could use, and this is what I ended up settling on. All the colours are the lightest colours in their family, all 3 of the colours I used for the dress, but they worked well together. So I'm using light yellow to add in all my shadow areas, and these are basically going along the lines where the arm meets the dress because that would cast a shadow, along the crease lines that are drawn into the image, under the hand, under her bust line, and also because my light source is coming from the right hand side, so along her back, then the opposite side along her belly would have the shadow. After getting all my shadow in, I will move on to my mid-tone, which is GY1 Moonlight, and this is basically, I'm just bringing out the colour a bit more, just extending the shadow areas into the lighter areas. Then I'll bring in my lightest colour, which is CT1 Daffodil, and basically just filling in the rest of the dress with this. This is quite a large area, so you might actually prefer to do more transition shades for this to help bring the shading out across, but I found this worked well enough. I did have to go back and forth a bit because the colour was a little bit blotchy on the initial layer, so I did have to add another layer just to fill that out a bit better. Once I had finished the dress, then I will move on to colouring her headband, and I didn't realise that it was out of screen, so I missed colouring that, but basically I did the larger flowers yellow to match her dress. I used the CT1 as the light colour of those large flowers and CT3 to add the shading to them. I then used some red for the petals on the smaller flowers and the CT1 again for the centres of them, and finally I used some orange for the kind of pointier flowers, and then that completed all my colouring. So then off screen I very carefully fussy cut the image out. It was a little bit tricky to cut around the stem of the rose, but I did manage it in the end. You just have to be very careful. I'm then adding Tombow Monomulti liquid glue all over the back of that image. I think a liquid glue works nicely here because you really want it to get into the crevices of the texture when you're pressing it onto the background. And you do want to make sure the background is dry before you attach your image to it, and then put something heavy on top of it to press it down as it's set into place. For my sentiment, I decided to use a die cut, and this die I got this in the Love from Lizi December card kit, and I decided I wanted to use the words from the inner negative portion of the die. So I'm using the outer portion as a guide to help me get it properly lined up. Before cutting this from the snippet of black card, I actually covered the back of the card with double-sided tape. That way I just need to remove the backing from the letters and put them into place rather than having to fiddle around trying to get glue on the back of them. Once I've got them in place, I can remove the other part of the die and then put some foam tape all over the back of my panel. This panel is cut to be just smaller than my card base, just very slightly smaller. So I'll adhere that into place, popped up on the card base, and that completes my card. Here you can see the sparkle from that embossing paste. I hope you enjoyed this card. If you did, please do press the like button down below, and the dislike button is right next to it if you didn't like it. Don't forget that this is my card for the Cupcake Inspiration Challenge, and you can join in and play along with us for a chance to win a prize from our sponsor Sparkle and Sprinkle. If you have any comments or any questions about the card or about the embossing paste perhaps, then please do leave a comment down below. Otherwise, I hope you'll press the subscribe button, which is on screen now, to make sure you don't miss any of my future videos. And if you want to see more from me straight away, then there are a couple of videos on screen now that you may enjoy. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time. Bye!